What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereotherapy. I'm your host, Lisa, and this is episode 128. Today in the show, I was joined by Eric Tobin. If you're not sure who Eric Tobin is, or maybe you've heard the name before, he is head of A&R over at Hopeless Records, but also is a part of the summer school tour going on now. So if you are a fan of going to those kind of tours, we should definitely be thankful for Eric kind of helping bring light to some of these new up and coming acts that deserve the attention. It was such a great opportunity to talk to Eric because I think anytime I can talk to someone that's been in the industry a while and is that veteran in that scene, it's really interesting to hear their take on how music has made an impact in their life, what brought them to their role they are now. And one of the things I loved is how Eric talked about how music was that gateway to conversation. And I think about myself, if I go to a show, if I go to a party, how am I starting that conversation? 9 times out of 10, it is music related. That is who I am as well. So I really resonated with that. We touch on how Eric living with Spina Bifida, and we go into all about that and how he copes with that, and also how he doesn't let it limit him. He wants to have stories in his life, and man, does he have them. We talk about how he hiked Mount Everest, Machu Picchu, what's next for him. And I think there's a lot of inspiring takeaways in this conversation. And I'm forever thankful that Eric took the time for me and this podcast because I truly appreciated it. Not only so much for what it could bring to me and my life and how I could apply it, but I know there's so many people that are going to listen to this and be able to apply it to themselves. So much in this conversation. Let's just get into it. Here's my conversation with Eric Tobin.
Nonetheless, Eric, thank you for having me as a guest. It's very cool of you.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited when I got that email. I was like, this is really great to have this opportunity because, our whole podcast is the intersection of music and mental health. And it's one of those things of, I love to just hear everybody's story of how music has made an impact and just bring a new perspective, and what a perspective like you. So I'm honored that you're sitting here with me. So I really appreciate it.
Well, good then. I'm happy. It's good. I've had at least a half a cup of coffee, so my stories ought to be real unhinged. No, absolutely. Well, great. Well, let me know where to start or chit chat, whatever's best for you is good for me.
Our first question we ask everybody that comes on here, because I love to bring it back to the early memories of falling in love with music, whether it was a time, a place, a record. What sticks out to you as a first memory of falling in love with music?
It's such a great question because this comes up quite a bit, I think, in even in personalized conversations with friends. Like, what got you into music? Or maybe we're talking to an artist that'll come up, or even a colleague. And um, I think music wasn't on my mind as that sort of middle school kid, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever, that first coming of like, what is culture? And I think there's enough word out there to know that I'm disabled. So, I've spina bifida, and part of my sort of that years where you go from like 10 to 14 or so, sort of formative for you. And during that time, I was spending a lot of time at home or in the hospital. But I had, through a great public school system situation, I got handed a trumpet when I was very young. And they give you the lessons at school, which is so very cool. And I think that I started, through that process, I got into middle school band or something like this. And there was this kid there, and I'm pretty sure his name was John. I'm old enough now to have memory lapse on this, but fairly certain it was John. And he asked me, what kind of music do I like? And I said, I don't know what kind of music I like. And then he started to go down this list of, have you heard of this artist and this artist? And I really felt something that I couldn't explain then, but I could tell you now was extreme FOMO.
Hmm.
And I was like, I have no idea. I felt like I need to learn it. He made me a mixtape, and that was he said, "This is a mixtape. This is good music. Go listen to this." And I did, and it was the Eagles and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to like.
Right.
And as I got into high school, and I was sort of getting out of it felt like the first time I was going to be healthy, right? And I
Hmm.
didn't. I would admit I didn't have a lot of cultural knowledge, and I think I went in there with a discount pair of white Levi's and a shirt tucked in and my hair combed over, and I really was just hoping for the best. And I went in with kind of some fear in that space. But the nice part was that again, because I was playing an instrument, I went to a band camp before because we are going to do marching band, and met a couple of great kids there, and they really were just in that space of like, oh, you don't know this band or that band? That band's terrible. Like, oh, I listen to this. Oh, that's for your parents. You got to listen to this. And it was different language. And I was offered some music, and the sort of process, I guess, can be intellectualized now, but in that sense of then it was, I just need to know the names of these bands. I need to memorize them. I need to memorize lyrics. It wasn't so much about and I say this with love, like I liked the music, but I loved the camaraderie. I loved the
Mhm.
community. And I think that that pathway in was about, okay, if I know all these bands and no one else knows, right? If I can go buy a magazine and memorize all of the names and like, even though if I can't afford the music, and, oh, this friend's working in a music shop, you get discounts on music. Okay, I'll go work there. And it really was, oh, we're going to a show in a basement. Oh, I want to do that. Well, I can't play guitar, but I mean, I can't sing, but I'd like to
Mhm.
put on a show and maybe I can put on a show here in this basement, do a party here and have a little bit of fun and be a sort of nut. And the sort of first foray into music was less about, oh my God, I discovered this band. It was more about, oh, I discovered conversation.
Mhm.
I discovered conversation that was imbued in cultural currency that allowed me to have a sort of, you don't know this, I know this. Are you going to that show? I went to that show. I met so and so there. They wear that t-shirt. I wear that t-shirt. And us against that world of kids who don't get into music. And
Mhm.
so when people ask me, it's because I think it's so like that first record I listened to, and there are a lot of records that I love. But I think the true first step into music was really how will I fit into this? It seems pretty exciting to have something to talk about with other people.
Yeah. Oh, I can really relate to that so much. As me in high school, I was always like the shy girl. I was always that girl on the outside. But once I found music, and again, for whatever reason, even this, like we talk about mental health, I struggle with anxiety. Like even before
Mhm.
I hop in these things, I'm like, oh my gosh. But once we're in, it's okay, we're talking music. I'm there. Even my younger self in high school was so similar of that of, okay, well, maybe I don't know how to approach that group because music, and I would go to the basement shows much like you. And it was one of those things of, okay, I have something to talk about. There's a connection there. And any job I went to was always like, well, what's your favorite band? How can we commute? And it started those conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think that so many of the things like it's different for everybody, right? So I don't claim to know
Right.
everybody's vibe, but
Right.
I wanted to do something. I think I come from a background of doing makes for value. If I do, I have value.
Yeah.
And I think that being in that space of kind of different kids, I think is how I remember us having this conversation in high school. Like we belong here and this is who we are. And you could go, hey, we're hanging out here tonight at the one coffee shop from the guy from Seattle in 1994.
Mhm.
Or hey, I can put on the show. Or hey, did you know about the show? Or hey, where everybody's meeting at the park. Oh, you don't know that guy? And
Yeah.
community has such value larger than even music. I think it's that there's a sort of psychological discussion to have there, but I think isolation is a, I say this lightly in a way, but like it is a killer.
Hmm.
And I think that, the opportunity, and we talk about this a lot in sort of my work with Hopeless for 20 years, what I'm doing with summer school, how I live my life outside of work is that, the value in doing switches to the value in being with others and being there for them is important and having common ground. And one of the great spots about creating worlds, like when people ask today, like, what is it that makes you choose an artist to sign? And it's almost
Hmm.
always they're having a connection with someone and they're in a community. For so many of my artists, like they're going through or have gone through a lot, Um, and I think what's the great part about this is that when I was back to 14, right, and I don't really have a lot of social skills, out of the fact that I missed a lot of things. When you read those lyrics and somebody's angry about something, I feel angry too. I wish I had a way to describe or discuss that other than, leave me alone. I'm going to my room,
Right.
and you read these lyrics and all of a sudden there's words where the emotion lives and I can sort of channel where my energy goes in someone else's language, right? But their experience becomes my experience at first, right? Like we're going to empathize with
Hmm.
the main character, right? If you're a reader. And I think that idea that, I don't want to forget, even as I march towards 50, that there's a kid at the barricade at every show. They're there for so many reasons, but a lot of it is about shared experience. But it started with these words, the way this person looks. I wish I could be that,
Yes.
And I know we can have hundreds of commentary about, oh well, my kid or this person shouldn't be like that, but we all have to be something. The rest is cultural judgment, and I think that idea that we can say, hey, these words mean something to me, and now I say what they say. And though it's not about stealing someone's ideas, it's about adopting an idea that allows your emotions to live somewhere. And I think when we work with artists, we're lucky in this space to encourage them to be honest and direct. And if it's going to be theatrical, have that fun because someone out there, they feel that way and they're looking for ways that encourage them to express themselves. And if they see someone doing it, they can do it. And if someone gives them shit, they
Hmm.
can say, well, pardon my French,
No.
screw you,
Yeah.
screw you. I've got my people, right? And so I think that
Hmm.
in that sense of like coming into this world, it was always music was a sort of gateway to personal understanding of an outside world, right? Like we don't get to with the way the internet works now, like I don't live in a small town and learn about the big city. I know about the big city by the time I've gotten to the internet, or
Right.
beyond. And I think now we have to learn how to be sort of go from my cultural small city to the world at large. And
Oh,
it's very different.
that's such a beautiful way to put like the music in the community because that's so many, like, me going to shows was the first time that I felt I belonged, and it was like, okay, this is something, again, much like you're describing, where those people saying those words, and maybe I can't say what I'm feeling, but again, I know a song when I'm angry, when I'm sad, when I'm grieving, there's something there. And I think it's just a beautiful thing. And I love for someone like yourself to say that because, as you said, like, gosh, what I think last year was that year 20 for you, and now you're in year 21 at Hopeless.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
like, just to think about that. And then if you could go back, everything you've accomplished and you're doing, if you could go back and tell your younger self anything that you almost wish you knew, like now looking back at these 21 years, what would that be?
It's interesting to bring this up. As a fun nerd, I'm taking Spanish lessons, and
Hmm.
the other day in the lesson, out of nowhere, my teacher, who's an amazing 20 something guy, is just awesome. And he said,
Hmm.
we were going over advanced conversation. He said, "Did you achieve what you wanted to in your life?" Was the question in Spanish. And
Hmm.
we had to answer this in Spanish, and I had to tell him in Spanish how challenging it was to answer in Spanish when I'm not certain I have the answer in English.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, that question of like, what would I tell my younger self? And I did spend some time on this, and it's maybe apropos to today's conversation, was I wouldn't go back and tell myself anything. And I know that I'm not supposed to say that because we're
Hmm.
in such a mode of like, go back and say a thing. I My advice to myself now is to let my young self be who he was. I experienced what I experienced, and I have such gratitude for the unbelievable uncomfortable moments that led me to hopefully be a better person. I'm unbelievably happy for those moments where I was having an argument and I knew I was wrong because I wanted to figure out how to never do that again. And I'm grateful for the friends I had. But I think there's this sort of like movie meme. If I went back and I told myself, because my feeling a lot of times is that there is life and there are narratives. And there's the life I'm living, and where I tell myself I've done what I need to do and I'm where I'm supposed to be because there is no other option. And then there's the narrative, I'm not where I'm supposed to be because I never did it right. And if only I could go back. And I
Hmm.
think there's this sort of like, Sartre type thing of like, I'm at the edge of the cliff and I decide to step back. Or Sartre says, there's nothing. But when you read like the Outsider and things like this, where it says everything is there, right? Like there's this absurdist thought where I get to have anything I want because I've decided that my life is good. So what would I tell my young self? Just do what you're going to do, kid. Just do what you're going to do. And my young self would say, who the hell are you?
Right.
And I hope that's not a raw answer, because I think there's always this like, how do I go back? But I think there's only forward, and forward is exactly how we make it.
I always say in these conversations, I'm like, I always take a piece of them and apply it. And I'm definitely going to apply that to me because there's so many times I do think that in life. And I think a lot of us do, where they're like, oh, well, maybe if I only did this and that, and not maybe thinking, just go forward. And I need to clip that for myself when I'm feeling a certain way of just, hey, that maybe again, you're where you're supposed to be because of who you were when you were
Mm-hmm.
younger, and don't
Well,
change that.
yeah, and I think, look, and I don't claim to be an anthropologist or understand culture in X way or Y way. I
Yeah.
think that we're sort of taught like you better examine your mistakes if you're going to be better in the future. And we use this word mistakes, or I had this tragedy, or I lost this friend. But
Mhm.
we should always, I hope that everyone, and I believe that everyone is striving to be the best they can be within the situation they're in, mindful of Stanford experiments and people in prisons and all these things.
Right.
I think there's this idea that we always have to fix ourselves, that we're not enough. We're in this constant battle with, I'm not enough for anyone. And when we could reasonably saying like, this is where I'm at, and I'm having the best time I can, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day about how they met someone my age in a park, and they're saying, I'm not working right now. I'm sort of in between. I'm seeing somebody in UK, but I have no idea. And I think the commentary back was like, oh, this person's life. And I said, I don't know.
Hmm.
You get to a certain place and you say, what's the difference between that man's life and my man and my life? Oh, you have a great job and you worked hard in your career. According to whatever bubble I'm in, that makes a lot of sense. But the truth is that man is alive. He is enjoying some different freedoms than I am, and he's doing his best. Does he have bad days? I do too. So I think this
Hmm.
idea that how do I fix myself versus how can I be great within the moment I'm in, and sure, again, not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or an anthropologist, I'm sure there's problems with my thought process and all of that, but I'd like to continue to really say that, I can be better and I will be better, but yesterday's over and I'm working on tomorrow. And I don't know who's calling me today. I don't know what's around the corner, but I don't fear it.
Yeah, so many takeaways already in this. And I think it's someone too, like me, I'm 39, about to be 40 very soon. And just thinking about the things in my life and yeah, not having that fear because a lot of us, like we have it in anything. Like some people, even with what I do with this podcast and music, and they're like, you're going to be 40. When are you going to give that up? When are you going to just, that's just your little hobby. It's
Right.
like, yeah, but like, again, what does that matter? Like just who you are, and it doesn't matter what age you're doing it or your life. And I love that. And part of our podcast obviously is music and mental health. And one of the things I appreciate about Hopeless is looking back of really walking the walk, whether it's the cause of the month,
Mhm.
or back in 2018, I remember the songs that saved my life, and I think it's so important that because that's our podcast, so many people share this song or this
Mhm.
artist. But I would love to know what is a song that saved your life?
Yeah, that is. I knew this question was coming, and I was
Yeah.
in my head. I was like, "Oh God." It is challenging, and I hate to be an old man on a boat telling stories. Uh, and I don't think I've told this one before, so this is my debut of this idea. When I was a little kid, my mother played piano. She was a great piano player. She taught some
Mhm.
lessons, and she taught me, and it was great. But I was very little. I would sit by the soundboard, and she would play, and I was so mesmerized by the sounds coming out. So mesmerized by the sounds coming out, and I think it was interesting because for my whole life, and some people are mad about the streaming space and all that. I will have never been happier than the ability to check through thousands of songs waiting for that moment that changes me. And I don't know that there's one song that has saved me in this world, but there's a song I go back to a lot in the last probably 10 years or so. And it's interesting because it's not in my genre. And some of my friends know that I'm a more of a classical guy than anything else. It's a weird quirk of mine. But there is this song, and I think it's a very different for this artist, but it must be 13 years ago now or more. I went to a video screening and I saw this video for this flight facility song, Claire de Lune. And I always forget the featured singer on this track. But I've watched this video probably 100 times and end to end in the way that like it speaks so virulently or vehemently, I think is the word I'm looking for, vehemently to like that inner sort of conflict and ennui that is life if you let it, and I think that um and I feel very much at peace seeing it and hearing it. And I often go back to this song. It's such an important song. It is not the song that I started with years ago, and but having ritual access to it is so incredible. And I think that when I'm in a tough spot, I'll go to that. But I mean, these things change all the time for me. I think lately, I'm spinning Hermanos Gutierrez and I can't get enough of it. And then I see that Ryax is featured on a track, and then I say, oh, I forgot about Ryax. And I go back and listen to hours, and it's like, my God, man, this is slow ambient. You're killing me with this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think that idea of sound sort of colors your space. So
Mhm.
um, it is a transitory answer. That's the song that I think I'd go to. Does it change on a regular, and does that affect how I feel? It sure as hell does.
I think that's important to note too, because I think a lot of us, I always joke, I'm like, if somebody asks like our first question, we ask everybody, mine would change day to day. There's no way like I would say, yeah, this is how I fell in love with music. Yes, maybe there's this one moment or this one song, but then if I think back, okay, wait, maybe when I was like 15 or like even in my 20s, what was around me? And I think that's what's really amazing about music is at different points in your life, whatever you're going through, you can feel something different. And again, maybe something you don't even expect, or maybe people would expect you to say, here, I assumed maybe something else. So it's really great to hear from everybody else that what has hit. And I
Mhm.
even think if I were to ask that same question about what saved my life, gosh, like I could again tell you something today and then 30 minutes from
Mhm.
now be like, what about that? So I think it's really beautiful about music.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And I think that it depends. Like, there's music that I remember singing along at a show that brings some nostalgia to the table. And when I need
Yeah.
nostalgia, that's there for me. And times where I want to agree with no one. And there's music I listen to that it's abhorrent probably to most folks. It's mood is so or sort of the music is dependent on the mood and vice versa. But I think in that sense of like, hey, do I have a song prepared? I didn't. But if I have to really think about it, that song and it's so connected to the visual piece um, is important. Is super important.
Yeah. And even like obviously like music and mental health, you've touched on it already. And for those that don't know, you were born with spina bifida. And I
Mhm.
think that you've touched on it on I know a lot of interviews and podcasts. So I feel bad having you to repeat it. But for those that
No, not at all.
maybe those that haven't listened to those or looked into you, maybe they just say, oh, well, yeah, I know, he works at Hopeless. I know Eric Tobin. I've seen him around. I think it's really important to bring awareness. So I would love to kind of give you the floor to talk about what spina bifida is and how you cope.
Yeah, no, no problem. I mean, spina bifida is a congenital disorder, so I'm born with it, and we talk about this a lot here at home. There wasn't a time that I was healthy and then got sick and then got better or something like this. I was born with spina bifida, and it's considered a snowflake disorder. Everybody gets it differently. I think the best way to describe spina bifida is being born with a spinal injury. And I won't get into the semantics. I mean, I think anyone who wants to look it up, the Wikipedia article is pretty comprehensive. Spina Bifida
Mhm.
Association website, who I'm on the board of directors there, is a wonderful job of getting into much of the details. There is no answer for why it exists. It could be genetic, it could be folic acid related. There is no answer. There's a lot of my work outside of Hopeless is helping to raise money for research and getting into abstracts and getting doctors in rooms to talk about this because it affects almost 200,000 people in the US, but, as far as the larger population, it is not a major disorder. But the
Mhm.
folks who have it is majorly affecting to mobility, being ambulatory. I am very lucky that I walk. It was not the prognosis in the 80s that I was going to exist and walk for a long time. I've had 26 surgeries, and multiple other, I'm wearing we like to call it the sad sandal right now because I unfortunately can't feel my legs. So I get a small cut and that can quickly be a huge problem. As I say to the doctors who often don't know what spina bifida is when I go into a clinic, I'll say the words, but I know that it's not something that there's deep knowledge on. I'll say it's like being a diabetic with
Mhm.
better circulation. My life is I have to check body parts every day because the one day you don't, you wake up with an infection. But it affects a lot when you're growing bones, muscles, uh, bowel, bladders, kidneys. It's now known it can cause sleep apnea, and then for a lot of folks, it does cause hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. I've been very lucky not to have to deal with that, but a lot of my close friends with it do have a shunt, which is removing liquid from the brain cavity and moving it into the stomach, and it has to be replaced, and is a very scary and dangerous thing to have. And I think that we talk about coping a lot, and I've tried my best. This isn't the right thing to do, maybe, but I've tried to ignore that I'm disabled. Oh, by the way, that's my cat. If you heard him in the
Oh,
background,
that yes, I did.
I'm right here, buddy.
Yeah.
Do you not like what I'm talking about? Do you want to come up here? So sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I think I get a cat. That's how I cope. Actually, this cat
Hmm.
followed me home almost 13 years ago, and he won't go away.
Oh.
But yeah, I think that when we talk about like coping and things like that, I've spent an enormous amount of time, especially when I was young, going, nah, this isn't a big deal.
Right.
It's not a big deal, and that caused a lot of problems, right? Because if you're not paying attention to it, I ran into more issues in my teens and 20s. I toured around the country with a
Right.
friend, lived in vans, all these things. And it wasn't really conducive to health, but it was conducive to me being like, whatever, I don't care. If it's going to be a problem, I'm not going to make it X far, then I'm going to go have a story,
Hmm.
if I want to go and be a childish reader of Jack Kerouac, I can pretend I can be that kind of man. Then I'm going to get out on the road and do this thing, and who cares? And it caused a lot of issues, and I think I'll probably pay a certain price on that down the line. I think, in my 30s, I sort of sat down and maybe this is everyone's journey, right? In that sense of like, I need to wake up and understand who I am and what I'm going through. And if I want to avoid these problems, and in America, it is not cheap to be disabled.
No.
And it's looking much like it won't be cheaper for those who are disabled right now.
Hmm.
But we can't rely on the government to take care of us. We have to do it ourselves. I think that I found a way to get healthy and be healthy, and which was big for me. And how do I cope with it? It's always there, but it is not the thing I talk about. Like even now, even though I will mention it, obviously it's out there in the world. I do a lot of fundraising. I'm not
Yeah.
shy about mentioning that I'm disabled. I do walk with a cane. It's pretty easy to spot me. I have a little bit of a wobbly walk. I think at 17, I was worried how my jeans fit and how people thought I walked. At 46, I'm just trying to get places.
Mm-hmm.
And, I cope by knowing it does exist and knowing that there are some limitations. But I don't want those limitations to get in the way of anything that I'd like to do or anything I want to be. I want to supply myself with the tools and the knowledge to take care of myself. I want to know that sometimes this will go beyond my ability to take care of myself. And sometimes I will have to run down to the hospital and discuss with them. I don't, a few years ago, I snapped my tibia. I didn't feel it. I just slipped at home and I snapped it and I heard it. I was like, oh my God. And here I was sitting on the floor going, okay, well, there's an A, B, C step to this. A is maybe I can fix this. That was a dumb idea. I tried to put bones back together. Please don't do that. B, I wrapped it up. C, I got some crutches out of the basement doing a fun crab walk. Called an Uber, went to Ronald Reagan and sat there pleasantly waiting and being patient. And they saw me as soon as they could, and we got it fixed up. And I have a rod in there, and life goes on, and there's a healing process. I can't go back and not slip. I did slip. I'm
Mm-hmm.
moving forward. Can I be careful in the future? Yes. Make sure that I have shoes on when I walk at home and things like that, And um, so, how do I cope? I have a running sort of safety to-do list that's always on, right? But I don't have to be perfect. I just have to do my best at it. And I also think the other way I cope with it is that I need to push myself because the moment I decide that I can't is the moment that I won't.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had some really fun adventures in my life that are meaningful to me as a silly 80s movie kid. I think that we talked about this yesterday in my office. That first Indiana Jones movie I watched, I probably was 6. My God, I couldn't get that hatted man out of my memory forever. And I didn't think, and I think when you're disabled or something like this, you're like, oh, I can never be that. But wow, how great, how
Right.
cool! And I had a stack of National Geographics. My mom was so good about getting them for me. And you're stuck in bed, you're stuck inside, you're reading all the time. And God, I wanted to see the world so badly. And I think that narrative that you're telling yourself, like, I can't do that because I'll get sick or I'll get hurt or I'll have no access. And there are people around you who love you and care for you, right? They're part
Mm-hmm.
of this story of like, please don't hurt yourself. Please do this, do that.
Right.
And that's part of that running to-do list. How do you make people feel that love you? How do you say to them like, I'm okay. Your support means everything to me and I want it. But these are things I need to be whole. How do we mix the two, right? That running to-do
Right.
list of how to make people feel a thing. But, I think when I was getting healthier in my 30s, one of the things I sat down and said was, if I'm 40, what's the story I want to tell a kid? What's the story I want to tell someone that I did with my 30s? Because I think everyone can say I worked really hard, and I have, and I
Mm-hmm.
love what I do. I truly love what I do, and I love the artists I work with, everyone that I've worked with, everyone that's gone away, whatever reason, I think about them and I do care about them. But I wanted to do something that said I can do this, and if I can go to 40 and set that tone, then I'll have something to say to myself and those around me. Maybe out of my confidence, maybe out of just experience. Maybe I am the old pitted faced man in the front of a bow fishing somewhere in the Chesapeake. I have no idea. But I said, I want to go do something big and I'm going to do everything I can to get to that. My goal at 40 is I will go do Everest
Mm-hmm.
to the extent that I can, and I'm not going to summit it. It's not going to work, but I will do some other version of that. And I got out there and I went and took vacations and I went as far as I could. And I found out that sometimes you're way out in the desert and you pop your arm out of the socket and you got to put it back in. And sometimes you are in an airplane and things go a little awry and you've got to deal with that inner idea of control. And I think in the 16-day walk on the EBC up the Annapurna, I worried every day that I broke a toe up there. How did I deal with it? There's nothing you can do that far away. You wrap it and
Right.
go. You elevation is a real the hell of a hell of a thing. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And I went on and I did Salcantay and Machu Picchu last year, and I've done a few others, and I'm working on a trip next year because I said, oh, I'm not going to do this again. I sat down, but why? What is the point of not doing it? It's not out of me like I'm going to push myself so extreme. I don't
Right.
believe this stuff is extreme. So my coping mechanism for me is it's not about finding ways to stay safe in the traditional sense. It's about figuring out how to be the best me in spite of. And I know
Oh.
that was a long rant.
Oh, I love that. And that's what I wanted to touch on Everest and all of everything. Like, because again, you talk about not limiting yourself because I think about today and you'll probably laugh at this, but today I woke up and again, pushing 40. So I woke up with my back and my back is hurting. And I'm
Mm.
just like, oh, I'm so sore. It's stiff, this. And I know me on a typical day, if I was maybe asked to do something, I mean, I'm not going to even say Everest, but something like that, I'd be like, I'm too sore. I can't do that. I got to go sit. I got to go. And how that's who I am as a person. And just, I don't want to say just giving up, but taking that easy way out of, hey, no. But hearing and researching about that, what you've done and what you, I couldn't believe that. And because yeah, Everest is no joke. And any of those things you listed is no joke. How were there any moments in doing that where you were just like, I don't know. Like I don't know if this is I can do this. And what kept you like was it almost the motivation of, I really want to do this?
It's a little bit about paradigm, and maybe it
Mhm.
comes into what I said before.
Yeah.
When I left, I said to myself, there'll be one time I do this
Yeah.
because there's limited of time, right? And who knows what my health is. There'll be one time, and I'll only see this one time. Um, I don't have time for complaints and worries. I have time for monitoring and ensuring. I think you probably read with spina bifida, a lot of people, with bowel and bladder. I mean, it's, you know, I say this out loud these days because I don't care anymore, but I think that social function is so important. And, I have to
Mhm.
self-cap. The ability, the world of bacteria is a funny one. And when you go
Mhm.
through that every day, I mean, like you have to monitor your health. But from the time I set foot in Lukla off that, you see that in those Netflix like world's scariest airports. It wasn't
Right.
that scary, but it definitely had its moments. You get off and you look around and you're a place you don't understand. Like I grew up in Western Massachusetts. It's pretty America. We got everything, the toilets flush and all of it. And from the moment you looked around, you said, I'm a stranger in a strange land. And I'm very small and I don't really matter. And it's my job to learn and be polite. And I think when you sit down and you have this paradigm of like, I'm here, but in the sense of time, I don't exist, right? Like I don't have
Mhm.
time for, I can't do this. The time to decide that was long before I went. When I booked the trip, I already could do it. And along the way, something could have happened. But that idea that like something could happen, this is a game we play with statistics. Somehow I'm in control on a spinning rock in the universe. And that statistics will always be in my favor. The words in my favor are maybe gratifying to fear-based thought, but they're not.
Mhm.
And if I list my life and the things I want to do based on how I might end, then I might never start.
Yeah.
And so look, I didn't have a moment thinking I couldn't do this. I had a moment that I will do this. And if things give out, and sometimes they do, I've been on some treks where things fell apart, but it wasn't, I wish I never did this. How could have I done this? I don't fall into that. And I've been
Mhm.
in hospitals and I've been in bad places. You asked Lewis, I mean, the early part of my career, I was like, I can go to London for 3 days, and I'm going to go to France for 4 days, and then go to Germany for 10 days and go build this business. And I wasn't sleeping and I was sick and I had a fever. And I was in this tiny, crappy hotel room in Cannes with metal shut and a little TV. And I was at a fever of probably 105, shaking in this tiny, gross bathroom going, I don't know the language and I'm probably in trouble. But you know what?
Yeah.
Can't believe I'm going to die in Cannes, France. And the
Oh,
next day I woke up covered in sweat and went to the apothecary, which new word for me then.
yeah.
Got some weird powder, put it in my body, and still took my meetings falling apart. Went to Germany and hurt my foot. Somehow made it worse by sleeping in a hostel because I was trying to go cheap. Got home, dropped into DC for Take Action Tour. And by the time I was hardly alive, went to the hospital. They looked at my foot and said, this infection is so bad that you got in your foot. We're going to remove your foot.
Oh,
And I said, nah, I want a second opinion. The doctor was yelling at me out the door. And I said, I don't know.
oh.
And I got on an airplane and went home, put my foot up and took some Tylenol. Sorry, this guy's going crazy.
No, no, that's
Took
good.
took some Tylenol and hoped for the best and went into the wonderful doctors at UCLA. And they're like, it's bad, but we can fix it if you'll just rest. And I kept both my feet. Stupidity, probably,
Hmm.
stubbornness, possibly.
Yeah.
Did I know any better? I don't know. But I think that it's one of those things where my relationship is that when you're early and you're in, maybe other people who have congenital disorders or became sick when they're very young. And maybe I should do more research or talk to more of them, or maybe you've had them on the show. I didn't see every opportunity on a highway for me to take. And not in a mean way, like, could still read and do all those things. I have great cognitive function. Um, but it wasn't always like, when I had that first surgery at the big one at 10, it wasn't a first, but it was, hey, we're going to have to remove part of your spinal cord that's fused to your spine. And there's a chance that you don't wake up and there's people crying around you. There's people worried. People are saying goodbye. And then you go to sleep. They count you backwards, and it's calm and it's pleasant, and you know nothing. And then you wake up later and it's tubes and discomfort, and you're there and people are around you and they're relieved. They're relieved. And it's a strange experience to see people when you're 10 bid you adieu.
Mhm.
So I don't know that relationship on the other side. Somewhere between must do to have value, to swap to community, to what this is. And I'm not doom and gloom about it. It's just the experience I've had. I'm not mad about it. I have no, like, I wish it wasn't,
Mhm.
as the old men say, wish in one hand and shit in the other. You can find out which one will fill up first, guaranteed. I know that's very gross, but if you hang around enough New England men,
Hey.
they'll say it to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's just it's who I am, and I actually am, like I said, I'm okay with who I am and who I've become. And I'm not saying that we couldn't sit down with a panelist of psychologists who would say, stubbornness is not a good trait.
Hmm.
It's possible that it's not, I just want to be the best person I am. And I think that doing those journeys um, did mean something to me. But I also, we asked before, what was that? What would you tell your young self? Or that question that my wonderful Spanish teacher asked, what did you set
Yeah.
out to do and did you achieve it? I didn't want to be a disabled kid in a small town that had nothing to talk about. I like tall tales. I like movies. I like stories. I like heroes. I like anti-heroes. I like all the supporting characters. I like where they've been. I like the problems they get into. I like the resolutions they have. I want that. I want a life of stories.
Hmm.
And if that's the case, then yeah, I'm achieving what I went after, but I'm not done. But
I
if
was
I was, I did what I did.
I was just gonna say too, like what's the scene like what's next? I mean, there's Everest, Machu Picchu, there's what what is on your radar for what's next?
Well, I've been lucky to be asked to officiate my 11th wedding in Kenya, so I'm doing
Oh,
that,
that's
and
amazing.
we're going to hopefully do a little bit of fun there, a little more domestic. I do have Kilimanjaro on my list for 2027. I found a guide that worked in music, which is amazing, through an amazing friend down in South Africa. And I'm going to take some buddies and go walk to the top of Kilimanjaro and back. And it's not going to be maybe as adventurous as the movies or other guys that are, ice picking and climbing. I have some friends that do it. They're unbelievably
Yeah.
incredible. I'm just going to slow walk it for 9 days and go to the top and down and learn a little bit while I'm there, and we'll see what happens. Uh, Katie, who's my amazing partner, we went down to Morocco a couple of years ago. I'd really like to go back and explore more of the desert there. It's on the list. I'm going to use this word. I yearn to get to Antarctica more
Mhm.
than anything. I really want to go to Greenland. I know these places sound like Mordor,
Yeah.
but I really did want to go to Greenland. A very close friend of mine who recently passed, and I had a plan to fly to Greenland and Iceland, and we didn't quite get to it, but it's still on my list very deeply. To just There's something about that idea that's so remote. It's one of the very few remote places left, at least in my imagination, and I want to go there. So, but on top of that, hey, I have this amazing 9-year-old stepdaughter in my life, and I went to Disney on Sunday, and that was its own journey,
Hmm.
and I loved it. And we were talking about going to the beach and things like that, and it's interesting. There's enough epic journey of just going down to the beach, and there's this amazing journey of learning how to be a good partner in that sort of parenting space, along with Katie and her co-parent. And it's hard. So I think that on paper, yeah, Kilimanjaro feels the best. As far as the rest of my life, like, I want to sign great artists. I want to be the
Hmm.
best that I can with them. I'm trying to be their friend, but I also want to help them go the distance they want to go, live the dreams they want to leave. The tour I'm developing, I care a lot about this because I think there's got to be this generation's nostalgia somewhere. And if it's not mine, I hope somebody else figures out how to do it better than I have.
Hmm.
And I want to go and raise money for Spina Bifida. I know it's not the biggest cause in the world, but it is meaningful to me and those who deal with it. And I think the research we've done has helped veterans, those who are quadriplegic, paraplegic, injured. It's the work we're doing at a research level. Is important. I think obviously we will fight through the changes that the nothing to say good about this Kennedy fella and what he's done at the CDC and the cuts and all that. I have my opinions, but it's not for
Right.
me maybe to share farther than that. But I do think that I'm here for that. Everybody's journey is different. This is just this one's just mine. So Kilimanjaro's on the list. I'd love Antarctica to be there. And a lot more camping trips and beach days and Disneylands with the family are also an adventure waiting to be had.
Yeah, and I think that puts it to everybody. If there is someone struggling to find that adventure, that it can be something like Disney. It can be
Mhm.
going to the beach. Um, wow, just yeah. And here I was saying, woke up with my back and saying, I maybe can't do this. So now the things you've said have really motivated me to look at myself and any struggles or obstacles I face to be like, again, are you going to be someone that's going to say I can't, or that let me see how I can do this? So I truly appreciate everything you've been open to sharing, because just reading about what you've done, I'm like, I cannot imagine doing that. And then also having the concerns that, like you've said, because you have spina bifida and there's real concerns that maybe someone like myself maybe wouldn't have or have to think about, and I think it will definitely make someone feel less alone. And I wanted to also touch on, obviously, the Spina Bifida Association. They do a walk and roll. And I know, is that
Hmm.
coming up, I think, September?
It's actually going to be in October for us this year, and
Okay.
I'm not looking at the. You caught me. I got to open up and look
Yeah.
at the date somehow while we do this. But yeah, it comes up every year, and it's something that's very near and dear. I just met with my co-chair the other day. Between sponsors, we've had incredible people come out, and it's so great to see the families and all of that. And I think that it's hard to fundraise, as we've learned. Like a lot of people,
Hmm.
like it's I'm pretty lucky to have an awesome network of great colleagues and friends who are willing to give, and it doesn't have to be much. It can be $5, $10, $20. I've had some friends give a lot more, and I never know how to thank them properly. Hopefully, just hugs and calls,
Hmm.
and it's fun to do it in its own right because when it's all done, it's Saturday, November 1st this year.
Okay.
So Saturday, November 1st at it's going to be at the LA State Historic Park. And again, we'll have some great people out there. There's amazing sports organizations that work with disabled folks out there. We've had Children's Hospital out there. We have some great financial organizations that come out, and it's just a lot of fun. It's usually 300 to 400 people. We walk about a mile. Some roll, some use assistive devices, and I think for a lot of my friends, they've had a chance to meet some of these families and parents. I think that's been the most eye-opening for some of my friends is to meet other parents who have children who are disabled and what that journey is like and how hard it is to just get a motorized wheelchair for someone.
Yeah.
What that journey is like when insurance says we'll pay for you to have one of those cheap things out front, but we won't pay for you to have the electric one unless you just go through all
Hmm.
these hoops. And if it breaks, good luck, and
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to say like, well, I have legs, it's no problem. But when you can't move, you need that. And when you go into a restaurant, you can't get into a bathroom. What are you supposed to do? So it's things like that where I think that people get to open their eyes to that perspective, And I would encourage everyone to come along. I'll be posting about my team next week and saying I'm excited for November 1st. I always do it on my Instagram and other socials. And look, if anybody is watching wants to know more, hear more about it, they can always send me a note on my Instagram. I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
Perfect. And again, I'll have all the links for it too. But if somebody wants to donate, is that just on the Spina Bifida Association website? They can do all that?
That's correct. Yeah, they can go to give.sbaa.org. You can find that link at the Spina Bifida Association website. If you go there and just look up Los Angeles, or look, if you're not in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
there are many of these walks going on. And I always encourage be local. It doesn't have to be mine. I on the grander scale, if you're in North Carolina, there's an amazing crew down in North Carolina doing a walk. If you're in Sacramento, there's a great crew doing walks up there. Same goes in the Midwest. There's many of these, and if there's one that speaks near and dear to you, donate to them. Otherwise, please, I'll have posted it. It'll be at this website. They exist. Donate as much as you like, and if you can't donate at all, it's always nice to just send a nice note out there. I think that for anybody, whether it's spina bifida, cerebral palsy, cancer, or any of these organizations, I do believe words of encouragement have meaning, even if you can't give. Intent has value.
I love it. I looked at that myself. I'm like, again, I don't know in New Jersey, but if not, I will definitely, it inspires me to make sure to pay attention to causes like that. And again, whether it's Hopeless Records, the cause of the month, what you just talked about, I think, there's always ways we can, again, that community we talk about, it's not just music, that community aspect of helping each other out and picking each other up and lifting them up. And I truly appreciate you, one, again, taking time for me today and
Mhm.
sharing your story. I truly enjoyed this so much.
Oh, no, thank you. It's nice to talk about it. I hope the stories weren't too long or boring,
No.
and I look forward to talking again. And if there's anything else I can do, please let me know. Nobody in this world is perfect, but at least we're giving it a good old try. And again, thank you for plugging Spina Bifida.
Yeah.
Hopeless is amazing. Summer school tour has been a lot of fun. It's a cool, busy time, and I'm hoping it is all given back. So that's the
Yes.
best I can do.
And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Eric. Again, this was such a great conversation for me because, again, anytime I can get someone on here who is that veteran of the scene to pick their brain about how music has made an impact, what music does for them in their lives, I think it's a really great picture to paint that music is that really important element for all of us in many different ways. All links below to check out Eric, whether it's Hopeless Record, the summer school tour that he's a part of that is so amazing. I love this tour so much, as well as the Spina Bifida Association. If you want to check out how you can support, as well as the walk and roll and participate or donate, all links below. I would love to send you there as well. Go check all that stuff out. This podcast is definitely about supporting things like that. As for our show, we will be back next week with a brand new episode, of course, every Tuesday. If you would like to support our independent show, all you have to do is leave a positive rating and review, a follow, a subscribe to the show. We won't bombard you with stuff. It just really helps us out. We appreciate you that have already done that. Also, if you missed it last week, this show will be a part of the Never a Phase Network. It is a network combined with creators, podcasters, overall lovers of the scene we love and and we're going to bring you some really, really cool stuff. And I'm really excited about this. And this show is a part of that network coming soon. Look out for it. Should be launching soon. All links below for that as well. So you can jump ahead and we will see you guys next week. All right. Bye, guys.